Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In this video, inshallah, I will comment on David Wood and Daniel Haqiqatjou's debate, which took place last week. Of course, I won't be able to comment on everything which was said in the debate because that will need tens, maybe hundreds of videos. So I would rather focus on the most striking, the most interesting points that were made in this debate. The title of the debate is "Which is more violent, Islam or Christianity?" And I'm sure that most Muslims were like me, eager to know how David Wood is going to respond when Daniel starts quoting the Old Testament verses. For the past 15 years, there were many people who were advising David and people like him, who were focusing on the Islam is violent polemic. There were people who were saying to them, "What are you doing? Your book is filled with those things. Stop being hypocritical." But David and people like him were ignoring the Old Testament verses. They were just focused on bringing up as many hadith as they could, which sound violent, without worrying about the inherent hypocrisy in their argument. Now the day came and David had to answer about Old Testament violent verses.
Kill all the women and children, but keep the virgin girls for yourselves as sex slaves. That's what the Bible claims Moses said. So I want to ask David Wood, do you think that Moses was an evil, bloodthirsty man? Are you going to denounce Moses in this debate? Because I don't see how you can denounce the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ when you have the example of Moses getting angry because his soldiers are not killing enough women and children.
There are a lot of differences between Mosaic law and Sharia. You're saying, how can we criticize Islamic law if we had Mosaic law?
So there are many differences between the Mosaic law and the Islamic law, and David is now going to start showing us those differences, which will respond to the question, how can you criticize the Islamic law and at the same time condone the Mosaic law? Let's go and see those huge differences.
There are some obvious differences. Mosaic law was limited geographically. Islam is supposed to rule over the entire world. So if you didn't like Mosaic law, the border was right over there. You didn't have to, whereas Islam is supposed to subjugate all of us.
So the first difference is Mosaic law is limited geographically. That's how David can criticize Islamic law and at the same time condone the Jewish law, because it is limited geographically. Is this convincing? David Wood fans, I'm asking you, is this convincing? Because according to this argument, stoning, apostasy law, all these punishments are fine as long as they are geographically limited. Are you okay with that? I'm sure that even you, David Wood fans, are not happy with that. Because this will mean that David Wood and people like him were making all this fuss about Islam because it was not limited geographically. If it was limited geographically, then there's no problem. You can stone people to death, you can kill apostates, etc., etc. Is that fine with you? Are you happy with that? I don't think so, but let's go and see the second difference.
According to the Bible, the Mosaic covenant was not the final revelation. It was a stepping stone on the way to a new covenant. But according to Islam, Muhammad's the final prophet. There's nothing coming after him.
And here is the second difference. Islam is the final revelation. The Mosaic law is not the final revelation. Which means stoning, apostasy law, and all the other punishments and all the other law that you hate and criticize and attack and use to falsify Islam, all of these laws are fine as long as they are not the final revelation. Again, David Wood's fan, are you happy with that? I don't think so. Let's go and see the third difference.
In the Old Testament, God gives the Mosaic law to the children of Israel after delivering them from their bondage in Egypt. God doesn't go to the Jews during their captivity and tell them that if they faithfully obey his laws, then he will rescue them from the Egyptians. Instead, he rescues them first and then gives them the law. This foreshadows the gospel. But God demonstrates his own love towards us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. It's Romans 5:8. So biblical obedience to God is a result of God's love, not a prerequisite for God.
Well, this sounds like a very major difference. The Mosaic law was given to the children of Israel after God has rescued them. And that's the difference between the Mosaic law and Islam. So, stoning, apostasy law, and all the other laws in Islam which you guys hate are okay as long as God give them after he rescue the people. Hello, David Woods fan. Are you happy with that? If all of these differences disappointed you, then don't worry, because David is now going to provide the most important difference. Let's go and watch.
Now, claiming to, and this will be the most important one for our purposes here, claiming to speak for God is a pretty serious issue, but the Mosaic law came with more than mere bold assertions by Moses. God provided miracles before, during, and after his revelation of the law. For instance, judgments on the Egyptians, parting of the Red Sea, water pouring from a rock, manna falling from heaven, and so on. And the pagans, the Canaanites, the Midianites, they were aware of these miracles too. So they knew who they were rebelling against if they went after Israel. By contrast, the Quran repeatedly denies that Muhammad's revelations were accompanied by any miracle other than the Quran itself. After being challenged by Jews and Christians for more than a century on Muhammad's lack of miracles, Muslims eventually composed a number of miraculous stories and incorporated them into later sources, but these stories directly contradict the Quran. Surah 10, verse 20, they say, "Why is not a sign sent down to him from his Lord? Say, the unseen is only for Allah to know. Then wait ye, I too will wait with you." 13:7, and the unbelievers say, "Why is not a sign sent down to him?" That's the difference I see here. See, keep in mind, I have no problem with God crushing people. In fact, when I was an atheist, one of the objections I had to the existence of God, you have atheists today who say, well, if God exists, why doesn't he, make the world as pleasurable as possible or something like that? My objection was, if God existed, he would wipe us out. I have no problem with God as the creator having authority over life and death. So if God decided to destroy us, that's up to God. If God were here, if God were right here, right now, and he started giving us orders and we said, we don't care what you say, we don't have to listen to you. And God said, well, now I'm going to destroy you. Hey, he's the creator, right? So this is very different from Muhammad coming along. Someone who comes along and the guy thinks his first impression of his revelations was that they were demonic. He has to be talked out of that by his wife and her cousin. He tried repeatedly to commit suicide. Whenever something was going wrong, he would try to hurl himself off a mountain. He admittedly was a victim of black magic that gave him delusional thoughts and false belief. He admitted that Satan tricked him into delivering revelations promoting polytheism. I mean, where do you see that in the prophets? Someone delivers a revelation, promotes polytheism, comes back later and says, the devil made me do it. So it's not just, hey, there's not enough good evidence here, or there's not enough miracles. It's, this guy is the least reliable person in history. If I were to...
So, case closed. David solved it for all the Christians. The main difference and the most important difference between the Mosaic law and the Islamic law is that the Mosaic law was supported with miracles. God showed miracles to the children of Israel, and then he gave them the law, which is a violent law, but it's okay as long as it's backed by miracles. On the other hand, Islamic law is given by Prophet Muhammad, who has done no miracles. Therefore, Islamic law is more violent than the Mosaic law. I don't know what to say. I think if any one of David's enemy wanted to end his career, he wouldn't have done it any better. What David basically did here is destroying his whole career, because he's basically saying that he doesn't have a problem with any law as long as it's given by the true God, who showed miracles to the people before he gave them the law. So stoning, apostasy law, all the other punishments are fine as long as they are given by the true God who showed miracles. Is this convincing to anyone? Such and such a religion is more violent than the other religion because it doesn't have miracles, where the other religion has miracles. So the existence of miracles decides which religion is more violent than the other. I don't understand how could this guy get a degree in philosophy with these kinds of arguments. There are many problems with this kind of argument. Apart from the fact that David destroyed and annihilated his pathetic career, David made it so easy for his opponent to come back and say, well, if that's the case, then all the quote-unquote violence in Islam is justified because we believe it came from the true God, who sent Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, who showed miracles. And if David wants to argue that the stories about the miracles that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ performed, which exist in the hadith, are fabricated and not reliable, then David is even digging a bigger hole for himself. Because the next question will be, how do you know that the Torah and the Injil you have in your hand are more reliable than the hadith? At least in the hadith, we know the sources of the information. In the Torah, I don't have much knowledge on this subject, but last time I checked, I heard that there is a gap of 1400 years between the time Moses lived and the earliest Torah manuscript. So if you think that 200 years gap is a problem which casts doubt on the reliability of the hadith, then what are you going to say about a 1400 years gap? All kind of fabrications could have been done in this 1400 years. Another interesting problem is this. Check David's argument. Prophet Muhammad is the least reliable person for two reasons. One, he has done weird things, according to David. Second, he has done no miracles. What are the weird things you're talking about, David? Well, they exist in the hadith. What about the miracles? What if I showed you a miracle from the hadith? No, that won't be accepted. That's clearly a fabrication. What about the weird things? Well, they exist in the hadith. I'm sure I'm not the only one who sees a problem in this cherry-picked hypocritical argument. To sum it up, if you want to give David's biggest enemy the chance to end David's career, he wouldn't have done it better than David himself. And this is the expected end of a career filled with deception, lies, hypocrisy, and double standards. The moment David was confronted with his hypocrisy, he literally ended himself. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much for watching. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.